Alright, let's dive into a topic that so many people have heard of, but maybe don't fully understand: Autism Spectrum Disorder. Our whole goal here is to get past the myths and the cliches and really explore what it's like to experience the world as an autistic person. But before we get going, just take a second and think about that question. Seriously, what's the first image or idea that pops into your head? Maybe it's a character from a movie or something you read online. Whatever it is, just kind of hold on to that thought. We're going to see if it shifts a little by the end of this. So first things first, what actually is autism? The most important thing to get right off the bat is that it's not a disease. It's not something broken. It's a fundamentally different way of being wired, a different way of experiencing and processing the world around you. This right here is the official clinical definition, the one you'd find in a textbook. It gives us a decent framework, right? It points to things like social communication and repetitive behaviors. Honestly, this definition is just the starting point. It tells us the what, but it doesn't really get into the how or the why. And that leads us to this really powerful concept called neurodiversity. The idea is simple, but it changes everything. It says that just like there's biodiversity in nature, there's neurodiversity in people. Brains come in all different types, and there's no single right or normal way for a brain to work. Autism is just one of those natural variations. And a quick but really important note on language. You might be used to hearing person with autism, but we're going to be saying autistic person. Why? Well, because many autistic people themselves prefer it. They see autism as a core part of their identity, not some accessory they carry around. It's part of who they are, so out of respect, that's the language we'll use. Now, let's tackle one of the absolute biggest misconceptions out there. The word spectrum itself can be super misleading because it makes you picture a straight line, and as we're about to see, it's nothing like that at all. Have you ever heard someone say this, or maybe even thought it yourself? This one phrase gets right to the heart of the problem. It assumes there's one way to be autistic, one look, and that's all based on a completely flawed idea of what the spectrum is. So let's just be crystal clear about this. The autism spectrum is not, I repeat, not a straight line from a little bit autistic on one end to very autistic on the other. That model is totally wrong, and it causes so much confusion and invalidation for people. So if it's not a line, what is it? Here's a way better metaphor. Think of the sound mixing board, with all those different sliders. Each slider is a different trait. So for one person, the slider for social skills might be low, but their sensory sensitivity slider is cranked way up. Someone else could have their verbal ability slider high, and their pattern recognition slider is off the charts. Every single autistic person has their own unique mix of these settings. Okay, so now that we have that mixing board in our heads, let's zoom in on a few of those sliders, those core traits. And remember, the key here is to see them as different, not as a list of problems or deficits. This chart lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have what's typical for non-autistic or neurotypical people, lots of indirect language, reading between the lines. On the other side, you see common autistic communication styles, often very direct, literal, and honest. It's not that one is better, they're just different operating systems. It's like trying to run a Mac program on a Windows computer. The program's not broken, the systems just aren't compatible without a translator. Another thing you might have seen is something called stimming, repetitive behaviors like rocking or hand flapping. To someone who doesn't get it, it might look meaningless, but for an autistic person, it's an absolutely vital tool. It helps regulate emotions, manage a sensory world that's too loud or too bright, or even just express pure, unfiltered joy. It has a very real purpose. And that difference in processing goes way beyond communication. It fundamentally changes how an autistic person experiences the world through their senses. And you know what? This unique perception can also be the source of some incredible strengths. Check out this chart. It's just one example of what a sensory profile could look like. This person is hypersensitive or extrasensitive to sounds and lights. So the hum of a fluorescent light might feel like a drill. But at the exact same time, they could be hyposensitive or undersensitive to touch, maybe not even noticing an injury right away. It's a completely different sensory reality. And here's the part that often gets overlooked. This different wiring can lead to some amazing strengths. We're talking about an almost superhuman ability to spot patterns, the capacity for intense focus that creates world-class experts, a powerful sense of logic and fairness, and a really creative approach to solving problems. These aren't just silver linings, they're genuine assets. So when we put all of this together, what do we do with this information? Well, the goal is to move past just being aware of autism and start building a world that truly accepts and includes autistic people. And that's really the bottom line. The point is not to try and fix or cure autistic people to make them more like everyone else. The point is to fix the environment. It's about creating spaces in our schools, our jobs, our communities, where autistic people don't just survive, but where they can actually thrive just as they are. So I'll just leave you with this one last question to chew on. How can we shift our thinking? Instead of always asking autistic people to change to fit into our neurotypical world, what if we started changing our world to fit everyone? It's a challenge for sure, but it's a conversation worth having.